lantern is lit. The road is quiet. Walk with me. The village had settled fully behind me by the time the road returned to open forest. Stone resumed its earlier rhythm beneath my feet. Evenly spaced slabs laid with quiet care, their surfaces carrying the softened memory of countless crossings. The warmth that had lingered between buildings faded gradually, replaced by the cooler breath of trees and shaded earth, and the lantern in my hand continued its steady glow, as though nothing in the world required it to change. The air felt damp again, though not heavy. It carried the faint scent of moss and a suggestion of distant water, subtle enough that it seemed imagined at first, and then became clearer as the path dipped into deeper shade. Trunks stood close without pressing inward. Their roots curved beneath the stone foundation and emerged in the surrounding soil in long, quiet arcs, leaving the road undisturbed. Walking required no adjustment. My pace remained even, guided more by comfort than intention, and the movement of the lantern's light across the ground kept my attention gently anchored to the next few steps, where moss traced the seams between stones. The glow revealed its softer texture without inviting my eyes to search beyond it. The forest beyond the light remained calm and complete, shaped by distance rather than uncertainty. As I continued, a low sound began to form beneath the rhythm of my steps. It was not wind, and not the shifting of leaves. It was steadier than that, like water passing through narrow stone. The road curved slightly to the right, and the sound grew clearer, folding into the quiet rather than interrupting it. The stones beneath my feet shifted subtly in pattern, longer now, and laid in broader sections. Their edges felt smoother, shaped by years of steady passage rather than recent repair. The air cooled a little more, and the space ahead opened just enough to suggest that something spanned the darkness beyond the trees, holding its place without announcing itself. The forest thinned in small stages, never stepping back all at once. Branches lifted higher, allowing more of the night sky to show between them, and a faint silver tone touched the upper surfaces of leaves where moonlight reached. The road remained steady beneath me, its foundation firm, its alignment unbroken, as though it had always known how to keep going, even when the land changed around it. The sound of water strengthened as I moved forward. It stayed low and restrained, not rushing, not pausing, simply continuing as the road continued, and the two rhythms settled beside one another without conflict. When the path dipped slightly, the lantern's glow moved ahead of my boots and revealed the faint darkening of stone where river air kept the surface cooler. The space around the road felt quietly shaped. Trees stood at a measured distance, leaving more open ground near the path than the deeper forest had allowed. Small stones gathered in shallow pockets beside the slabs, pressed into the earth by years of rain and settling, while patches of moss held to the shaded edges where moisture lingered longest. The lantern's light traced these details briefly, then returned to the center line of stone, where footing remained simple. A few steps later, the bridge began to appear. It did not emerge suddenly. Its outline formed gradually as the trees opened just enough, the arch rising from the riverbanks with quiet assurance. It was not tall or ornate, but deliberate. Each stone fitted tightly against the next, so the curve felt precise and measured, like something built to last without needing attention. Water moved beneath it, dark and reflective, its surface broken only by steady current over smooth rock. The sound it made was constant but restrained, and the lantern's glow caught occasional glimmers where the river's surface tilted toward the light and then slid back into darkness. The bridge waited ahead without urging me to hurry, holding its place as calmly as the road had held mine. The entrance to the bridge narrowed slightly, guiding movement inward without confining it. I stepped onto the first stone and felt the surface change. It was cooler here, worn into a smoothness that suggested long use rather than recent repair, and the shift encouraged a slightly more deliberate stride, not from caution, but from the simple awareness of texture beneath my boot. The lantern's light traced the inner curve of the low walls as I crossed. Stone rose to waist height on either side, solid and reassuring. And though I did not need to touch it, my hand drifted close enough to sense its steadiness. The incline was gentle, requiring only a quiet adjustment in balance, and the movement remained easy, supported by the careful fit of stone beneath each step. Halfway across, the river's sound deepened beneath the arch. It echoed briefly, and then softened again as I continued upward, as though the bridge shaped the sound the way it shaped the road, guiding it without forcing it. The lantern's glow reached down toward the water for a moment, catching a small, shifting reflection, and then returned to the path ahead, where the stones rose toward the crest. At the highest point, the far bank came into view. Beyond it, something vertical stood where the road should have continued. It was not hidden. It did not attempt to blend into the forest. It simply stood, forming a clear interruption in the line of stone, while the trees on either side remained unchanged, patient and still. Descending the far side of the bridge was effortless. The slope carried me downward in the same steady rhythm that had brought me up, and when the ground leveled again, the road resumed its familiar texture beneath my feet. The river's sound faded behind me in measured layers, becoming less distinct as branches and distance softened it, though the steady presence of water remained felt, even after it grew quieter. Ahead, the vertical shape clarified into a closed gate, set firmly into two thick stone supports. It spanned the width of the road without leaving space at its edges. The gate was constructed of heavy wood, reinforced with dark metal bands. The wood had aged into a muted tone, its grain visible in faint lines beneath the lantern's glow, and the hinges were thick and deeply set, their surfaces dulled by time, but not weakened. Before reaching the gate, the space between the far bank and the wooden barrier held a subtle stillness that felt slightly denser than the rest of the forest. The stones beneath my feet bore faint variations in color, darker near the river's reach and lighter toward the dry center of the road. Small fragments of gravel gathered at the edges where the foundation met earth, settled there over many seasons without being disturbed. The trees stood at a measured distance from the stone supports, their roots curving respectfully away from the constructed boundary. Moss had gathered lightly along the lower stones of the gate's frame, not thick enough to conceal the edges, but present enough to show that time had been patient here. The lantern's glow revealed these quiet details without emphasis, tracing their texture and then easing back toward the center of the path. There were no markings carved into the stone posts. There were no visible locks and no warning signs. The gate simply stood closed. I slowed a few steps before reaching it, not from uncertainty, but from recognition that the road ended here for now, as though it had paused intentionally rather than been stopped. The forest on either side remained calm and unchanged. No alternate path revealed itself through trees, and no side trail offered continuation. The lantern light rested against the gate's surface, warming the wood's muted color for a moment, then shifting back toward the ground at my feet, where the stone remained steady and uncomplicated. The air held steady. The river continued behind me. The gate remained unmoving, and the quiet around it felt complete rather than unfinished, as though the boundary itself had been allowed to remain for reasons that did not need explanation. I stopped a short distance from the gate and allowed the moment to settle naturally. The stone supports were deeply embedded in the earth, their bases packed with gravel that had long since settled into firm alignment. The wood of the gate bore faint irregularities, where knots and grain rose subtly beneath its surface, and it had weathered many seasons without splitting, holding its shape as calmly as the bridge held its arch. There was no sense of resistance in it. Nothing about it felt hostile, and nothing about it felt inviting either. It existed in a state of completion, as though its purpose was not to challenge or welcome, but simply to be a boundary that could remain without conflict. I did not test the hinges. I did not place my hand upon the wood. The road had carried me here without urgency, and it did not press me forward now. After a moment that required no measure, I turned back toward the bridge. The movement felt balanced rather than reluctant, a simple change in direction that did not disturb the stillness. The gate remained where it stood. The lantern light followed my steps, returning to the stone road and revealing the familiar path back toward the river. Crossing the bridge again felt different, only in direction. The incline rose beneath my feet, and the river's sound strengthened beneath the arch, becoming fuller for a moment as the stone shaped it. Halfway across, I slowed slightly and felt the weight of the structure beneath me. The stones held their shape without strain. The arch carried the road without shifting. The water flowed steadily below, unconcerned with gates or crossings above it. At the far side, the forest welcomed me back without change. The air warmed slightly as I moved away from the river's immediate coolness, and the lantern's glow traced the path forward once more. The bridge remained behind, and beyond it, the gate remained as well, settled into its place without demanding return or insisting on meaning. Beyond the bridge, The path curved gently through denser trees. Their trunks rose evenly spaced, and branches met overhead in loose arcs that shaped the sky into narrower fragments. The stones beneath my feet felt familiar again, though here they bore faint depressions where years of passage had softened their surfaces. The air carried the scent of damp leaves and river mist, and the lantern's glow rested briefly against bark and root before shifting forward again, keeping the rhythm of walking steady and unhurried. A modest wooden shelter appeared beside the road, its roof slanting downward toward the trees. It was open at the front, containing a single bench set against its back wall, and the wood had darkened with age while remaining intact. The bench surface bore a smoothness that suggested long use rather than neglect, and the interior space held a slightly different stillness, shaped by the presence of simple walls. I paused briefly beside it, letting the lantern's glow reach the corners and settle against the bench's worn edge. There was no need to sit, but the shelter offered the quiet possibility of rest without insisting upon it, and that was enough to make the road feel thoughtfully tended. After a few calm breaths, I continued on, leaving the shelter behind as it remained, steady and unchanged. The forest gradually thinned again, revealing a small clearing ahead. The ground within it was carefully laid with smaller stones packed evenly into the earth. At its center rested a shallow circular basin, carved from a single piece of stone, filled almost to the rim with water that remained still and reflective. The lantern's glow touched the surface lightly, creating a faint ripple that settled almost immediately, as though the water had learned to return to calm without delay. The road curved around the basin, rather than crossing through the clearing's center. I followed the curve naturally, allowing the arrangement to remain undisturbed. The clearing did not feel abandoned. It felt completed, like a place made for quiet presence rather than activity. And as I left it behind, the forest returned gradually, rather than suddenly, gathering around the road in patient spacing. The slabs beneath my feet were set more tightly here, their seams narrow and carefully aligned. Faint patches of moss traced the edges between them, not thick enough to interrupt footing, but present enough to reveal the age of the road. The air held a trace of warmth from the clearing, but cooled slowly as the canopy thickened, and somewhere above, a branch shifted lightly, releasing a quiet scattering of leaves that fell without urgency. The road rose and leveled in gentle, unremarkable changes, until the trees began to thin once more. An open land appeared ahead. When the path emerged into grassland, the space felt wider than before, the ground rolling softly on either side. The lantern's light appeared smaller against the openness, yet it remained steady and constant. The stone beneath my feet felt drier here, holding warmth gathered during the day, and to the right, a line of standing stones appeared at irregular intervals, weathered and silent, marking something old without forming a barrier. The hills ahead appeared closer now, their contours more distinct beneath drifting clouds. The bridge and the gate remained somewhere behind me, absorbed into distance rather than erased. My pace remained even, supported by the steady line of stone. The night deepened gradually as clouds softened the moon's brightness, and walking required no effort beyond the natural rhythm of breath and step. There was no sense of arrival waiting ahead, and no resolution required tonight. The road maintained its quiet line toward the hills, neither narrowing nor widening, simply continuing. The lantern remained in my hand, steady and warm. The quiet held its balanced shape as I walked onward into open land, carried by stone and night in the same calm measure.